Hello, everyone. Prof Sales coming at you with another episode of Revenue Wrap. It is Thursday, January 19th. Hope you guys are all doing well. And tonight we have two brand new resellers. I shouldn't say brand new because they're definitely not brand new to reselling, but they might be new to you. They might be new to YouTube and this format, and we're excited to have them there. So we have Katie and Kayla. How you doing, guys?
Hi. Good.
And we're going to be talking to them tonight. We want to find out everything we can about them and their approaches to reselling. They live in two different areas of the country. Anybody getting like music coming through?
What is this?
I think that's your volume. Kayla, you got to turn it down, or Katie, one of you guys, on your computer.
Not me.
That's really weird. Getting like music coming through? I think that's your volume.
Sorry, that was me.
Kayla, you got to turn down on your PC or laptop or whatever you're watching on.
Okay.
That's really weird. Music coming through? I think that's your
Sorry,
volume.
that was me.
You got to turn down on your PC or There it went. Sorry about that. Are you still there, Kayla?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it was probably just it's on a delay, a 30-second delay, so probably what we were saying was coming through from, like, if you had the video up in the on some device, it was just coming through late.
Okay.
Possibly. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I've never actually heard it do that before. But we're all good now. So we're moving forward. All right, guys. So let's get right into it. So why don't we start with you, Kayla? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you got into this reselling game.
Well, I am a stay-at-home mom of 3 small children, and looking for something to do to make extra money to pay for private school tuition for my older 2 kids. And we just kind of fell into it, I guess. We've always really been interested in antiques and old stuff, and so we just kind of come across something one day at a garage sale that we thought was undervalued and decided we could make some money off of it on eBay. And we have been kind of selling things from around the house before that to make some extra money. And so once we found something that we realized we could sell for 10 times more than we paid for it, we decided, wow, there could be something to this. So that's kind of how we got into it.
Nice. So that's a pretty common story. A lot of people seem to find,
I can't really remember not doing it.
Nice. That's pretty cool. How about you, Katie? How did you get involved in reselling? What was your reason?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently a part-time reseller, and I work a full-time job outside of that. But I've just always loved thrifting, and where I grew up, it was really good thrifting for more so vintage women's items that I was thrifting. And I actually started reselling and selling my clothes at a consignment store that gave me like really fair prices, and I just sort of got addicted to it. And then I looked into different apps for doing that, and I came across Poshmark. And now I'm pretty solid part-time doing Poshmark, and I'm just looking to grow it at this point, and I've been doing it for about 6 months.
Okay, cool. So as you guys have questions in the chat, I typed in the chat, please type the word question, surprisingly, or some question marks, and we will get questions to them. So as we get into the show, we'll try to answer more and more as we go. And let's start with Katie and talk to you about your platforms. Now, you mentioned Poshmark.
Yeah.
And we've had some other people on the show who sell on Poshmark. And Poshmark, is not a platform that I'm super familiar with, although I'm trying to learn at least a little bit more, not necessarily sell on it, but at least learn a little bit more how it works. Why did you go in that direction? Like, what drew you to Poshmark versus, eBay or Amazon, which tend to be a little better known, for instance, but what drew you to Poshmark specifically, and what do you tend to sell on there?
Yeah, so I had some friends that were using it, and initially I was just selling my own clothing, and I just think it hasn't been around as long as eBay, so I feel like it doesn't have as many regulations, and like the barrier of entry is really low because it's kind of a newer app. And I just feel like there's less, I don't know if I want to say rules, but like less steps to get a listing up, for example. And it just felt like an easy way to start for me. So I started just selling my own clothes that actually got rejected from a consignment store. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to sell these. And I like made a lot of money on them. And I was like, oh, I want to keep doing this. But Poshmark specifically, I liked the idea of how you can brand your own closet. And that's like really important, and the social aspect of it. And when I started, there were other people on the app that were really willing to help me. They call it like spread the posh love. And they have it's just like a really nice community, and I think a really nice way to get started in reselling that's a little, I think, less hectic than eBay. And you can do it extremely part-time, and it's very social.
Gotcha. Okay. I like that you said you got rejected from consignment store. I didn't know that that was possible, actually. I thought you just took it in and they had to do it.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't consignment. It was like a place kind of like Buffalo Exchange or like Plato's Closet. And they actually, I heard they were kind of pulling a scam where they would tell people their clothes were no good and to donate them in their bin.
Yeah.
And like I had really nice clothing. Like I had like Clark shoes that were worth like $150 that they like told me to put in this bin. And I was like, I can't do it. Like maybe they legitimately just didn't feel like they could sell them. But I was like, I got to try to do this by myself. And then I started using Poshmark, and it was kind of like an addiction after that.
And it tends to be that way with reselling. I know, Kayla, in your case that you are selling more on eBay, but if I remember our talk before the show, you're not really necessarily as focused on clothing. So tell us about that.
No, there's really not clothes available where I'm at, so we kind of had to figure out something else other than that to sell. And we don't really have the space, I don't think, to store clothing or photograph and all that so much like I would want to if I were doing clothing. But we have always just really been interested in old things. And so mostly what we sell are kind of more vintage and hard to find things. We kind of have started selling the things that we knew. For example, I don't know if you all remember that Ronnie Hart sold a Griswold cast iron skillet for about $1,200, whatever. Well, my husband has been a Griswold collector for a long time. And so cast iron is something that he really enjoys looking for, and he does most of our sourcing. So now he does. And so that's something that he looks for, cast iron, and he's into kind of restoring and cleaning them up and selling them. So we've kind of done things like that we were interested in, things that were hobbies. There's other things that he collects that we've, purchased. But we just kind of source what we can find locally, and it just depends on what we can find at the time. But we really like old stuff, and so that's mostly what we source.
And in your area of the country, you're in the Louisiana area in general, and in your area of the country, you're able to find a lot of older vintage type things, right?
Yes, we are. There's a lot of just cool stuff. Louisiana is very culturally diverse. I'm not sure that everybody knows that, but there's a lot of interesting old artifacts and local products that we can buy and sell that maybe other people can't find. So, and that could be anything, even food. There's food products here that we have that nobody else has that we can buy and sell.
Right,
so.
Right. Wicked Picker has a question, and this is a good question because I have a cast iron skillet and I had to clean it tonight before we cooked dinner. So this is a good question. How do you clean up cast iron? Do you know, Kayla, or do we?
There's a lot of ways to do it. The secret sauce, I guess, that we use is to get the crusty, greasy stuff that gets on there over time. Like if someone's used it for 50 or 60 years, we use a lye and water solution that we leave it in for a while, and it eats it off. But you can also do it in the fire. And then there is a product called EvapoRust that we let them soak in to get the rust off. And you can we buy it at Tractor Supply Company, but feed stores and stuff like that have it, and it's not caustic. You can touch it, it doesn't burn your skin. Now the lye is a different story, but as far as the rust goes, this stuff is clear, it doesn't smell, it doesn't burn, and you just let it sit in there for forever, and you can reuse the solution over and over and over again. So we'll first usually soak it in the lye, clean it real well, put it in the EvapoRust for maybe a couple weeks take it out, clean it, and I've seen some amazing transformations that way. He actually has some things in the lie right now. So he just kind of keeps a big storage tote with a solution in it, and then he'll just kind of move things from one to the other.
Awesome. I'm going to have to remember that the next time after we cook some steaks. I'm going to be like, I've got a little piece of chainmail I used. It actually works really well. Linda Glass has a question. Linda, we're going to get to your question in a moment, so hang on to that. But Maggie wanted to know, Katie, from you, do you need to develop a following on Poshmark in order to be successful? And if you do, can you explain what a following is?
Yeah. So Poshmark is almost like an Instagram for shopping, I would say. Like, you can elevate your items by how much people like them. You also have to share your items. I wouldn't say that, compared to somebody with like 100,000 followers on Poshmark, you're extremely limited and nobody's going to look at your closet. If you're sharing your closet and being active in the Poshmark community, people will definitely take notice of your closet. I guess just an example of like numbers, I think I'm around like 15,000 followers on it. Most people that are really, really active have like 300,000 followers. So it's, in terms of the grand scheme of like power sellers on Poshmark, that's not a lot, but I definitely get a lot of traffic to my closet. But I definitely had to share a lot and follow a lot of other people's closets and interact with people to get to that point.
Right. It seems like it's more of a platform designed to integrate better with maybe social media than say like eBay traditionally, or even Amazon.
It's cool, but it also is time consuming. It's neat that you can impact the algorithm by simply interacting with it, which I don't know. You can't do that as much with eBay, but it takes a lot of time. Like I'll be like sitting on the couch watching a movie and I'm like sharing things on my Poshmark. So right. Even I've heard of, you know how people talk about with eBay, like hiring assistants and things like that. Like I've even heard people will like pay people to like help them share their closet and things like that.
Wow.
So it's interesting.
Might be a new business, new revenue stream there I need to check out. All right, so let's talk about the full and part-time status of it. So Katie, we'll start with you. Would you consider yourself full or part-time, and do you do this mainly solo or do you have a partner?
Did you say me? Did you say Kayla?
Yeah, Katie. I said Katie. I'm sorry.
Sorry, the two Ks.
Yeah.
So I'm part-time. So I work full-time on a web development team. I actually do user experience, which I think is one reason why I really love Poshmark. But before work, I drop off my packages. On my lunch break, I share my closet. And then after work, I try to list every day and get my shipments ready at night. So I probably work doing Poshmark like 15 hours a week outside of my job. So I definitely work a lot, but I'm part-time.
And what about you, Kayla?
I would say that I'm full-time, but I don't work at it, a steady 8 hours a day like I would like to, because I have 3 children and I have a 2-year-old at home. So, you get done what you get done.
It takes a little time, right?
Yeah, it does. But my husband only works 4 days a week. And so he is the one that is sourcing mostly Friday and Saturday. And we used to do it all together. And we used to go to a couple of auctions on the weekends and go garage selling. But it got harder the older the kids got, the more kids we got to drag everyone around. And here, if you know what some people refer to as the golden hour of garage sales, well, here the golden hour is between about 5:45 and 6:45.
Whoa!
And it's super early, and some people even are out earlier than that. So it's hard to get 3 kids in the car and out of the house at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we don't do a lot of that. I do some, but not all that often. So he does most of that. Now I do everything else. So typically I try to pack at night, and I will do my shipping labels before I leave to get my kids in the afternoon and drop off at the post office that's right by their school. And I try to limit that to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as I have a 2-day handling time. Mm-hmm. I could do more, but I find that I have to give myself a little bit of wiggle room in case something happens. I want that 2-day time, because I do have kids and you don't know who's going to be sick or whatever, and I can't get out and do that. So typically in the mornings, I try to photograph and then try to list during nap time. But that's pretty much the only time that I have. It's nap time, maybe early mornings, and then whenever I can do at night after they go to bed.
Right.
Unless my mom does keep them some for me, and so that helps. So anyway, so it's just kind of like when I can do it. Pretty much. I don't have a lot of order to it right now.
Well, I was going to say, someone in the chat said that they had the same timing in South Carolina for those early garage sales because it's hot. It's in the summertime, and I remember back last summer, it wasn't even summer, it was like probably May or maybe the beginning of June. By about 11 o'clock, 11:15, it's starting to hit like 80, 81, 82. And you've been out there for 3 or 4 hours. I'm like, I'm done. I'm ready to go in.
They're pretty much done here at about 10 o'clock or 10:30. And so at that point, you're trying to bargain to get what's left over.
Yeah.
You either want to be super early or late.
People don't want to drag it back inside. So you're like, let's make a deal. So that's awesome. All right. So Kayla, talk to us about, now obviously you guys have some similarities, but you have some differences too. So between the two of you, but Kayla, in your case, and this goes back to a question we had a moment ago, what's a typical day, if there is such a thing, what's a typical day in terms of reselling for you? What does it look like for you, like from start to finish? Do you have a schedule that you follow? Do you wing it? Do you have an overall plan? Are you feeling your way as you go? What's it look like?
Usually when I have a plan, my children kind of catch on to that, and they're most uncooperative. I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but they can feel it. Usually, I get up and get the kids ready and drop them off at school, come back home, and I'm able to work on some stuff with my toddler, toddling around. And so in the morning, between the time I get back home, about 8 o'clock or so, if I don't have, something else to do, between that and about, 11, when he goes down for a nap, I try to get household kind of stuff done. And maybe a little bit of eBay, and then I try to really work through nap time as best I can. And that's with whatever needs to be done, photographing, listing. I usually try to photograph a lot at one time so that I can just sit and list, and I can sit in the living room on the couch and list if I need to, as long as I have photographs done. So I just kind of, whatever needs to be done. Now, sometimes there's not a lot of sunlight outside if it's kind of gloomy, and I do have like umbrella lights and everything, but the room that I photograph in, I really need the 2 windows to be open and the lights too. It just does better that way. So if it's kind of dark outside, well, then I'll find something else that needs to be done. I just kind of base it on whatever fire is hottest at the time, which is probably not the best idea, but that's kind of how it goes.
Sometimes that's the way you have to do it.
Sometimes I work at night. Sometimes I just kind of drop everything and say, I've got to get X amount of stuff listed, and that's what I do. But I do need to work more on consistency. Sometimes it's just kind of hard when there's little people around and there's a lot of crises mostly, and they really like to help though. My kids really like to help me. So my 7-year-old, a lot of times, if there are things that she can pull for me that are labeled, like I have a bunch of something and she can pull, she likes to pull those things for me. So I'll give her kind of a list of stuff to look for, and of course I double check it before I mail it, but she likes to help me doing that. So she test things or sort or whatever. So I try to get her involved with that. It keeps her kind of a little occupied.
That's cheap labor. So and
it's
always
really
available.
It's gotten her into this little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit now.
Very cool.
And I have let her pick things and say, okay, we're going to go all the way through the process with this one thing that you found at the store, and she likes that. She really wants to be involved in it. She watches the Crazy Picker Life. And I don't know if you've watched that channel, but family have 6 kids, and several of the kids are really involved in the business. And some of them are close to her age. So she really liked that. Like, it's getting her excited. She wants to be older already. So she can do more.
That's a great start. What about you, Katie? You obviously have a full-time job you're juggling, and you may have some other priorities and responsibilities as well. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, I just have to say, I admire all that you do with reselling with kids. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I work on East Coast time, and I actually sometimes have to like travel back to work, which has been complicated, and I'm like figuring out what to do with my Poshmark closet while I'm gone. But basically I wake up at like 9 a.m. Eastern time, but here in Mountain Time, I start work at 7. But before, basically I live across the street from the post office, which we were talking about earlier, but that's like so lucky. I'm like so happy about that. But on my way to this cafe that I work at, I drop off my shipments. I go to the cafe. It's kind of like a workplace cafe, and work there most of the day. And then I come home, and in like the last hours of daylight, I will try to list. At this point, I'm trying to list between like 10 and 15 items a day I've worked myself up to. And then once I do that, I will pack the items for the next day to get ready to ship them in the morning. I usually do that a little bit later in the night. So that's mostly what I do. I try to do fun stuff too outside of that, but right now it's pretty busy because I'm trying to grow my Poshmark a lot more.
Yeah, and we're going to ask you a question about that in just a moment, because someone asked a question about that. But I want to say to everybody first, if you guys are enjoying the content you're hearing from Kayla and Katie, please smash the like button. It lets me know and YouTube know that we're doing a good job, and lets them know that you guys are liking the content. So it's right down there. Sorry, Karen's not here to say it in her pirate voice, but she's here in spirit upstairs listening. Mississippi Picker had a question. I guess this one would be for you, Katie. It said, how many followers and listed items does it take on Poshmark before you start seeing regular sales?
Honestly, I think if you're sharing a lot, you don't need a ton of followers, and people aren't super judicious about how they follow. Like when I first started, I was like, oh, well, I like this closet, so I'm gonna like this one, and not like mostly people just follow everybody. So just organically, your closet's gonna grow very quickly, I would say, especially if you're sharing. But I would say if you're sharing your closet, even if you don't have a lot of followers, I remember when I first started, I was like, I can't believe I'm like making these sales and I have like 100 followers. So I mean, because it does still have a search algorithm, and if you're selling like nice items and if you have nice pictures, people are still gonna like search for your items. The sharing and the followers is just sort of like an extra boost you get. But I mean, the people who have thousands of followers are probably getting like a ton of sales, but I don't think you're really prohibited if you have not that many and you're just starting out, because you'll probably grow in followers like pretty rapidly.
Right. And that's always the case. You know, I mean, you can have followers on eBay as well, although I don't think it really integrates with social media quite the same way. But yeah, I mean, obviously Poshmark is designed sort of around that social aspect, which is, and you've got to respect that to get sales. What does, Katie, with you, what sort of sourcing do you think's been the most fruitful for you? Obviously you're doing some clothing, but you're in the, where are you? Colorado. I had to think of it. It's been one of those long days. And so, and everybody's got their own, you know, parts of the country where you find different things. We'll get to Kayla in just a moment as well, and she has a different take on that. But when you're sourcing, what sort of sourcing do you do, and which types have you found to be the most fruitful for what you're looking for?
Yeah, so I started thrifting. I was a lot more into vintage items, and I lived in upstate New York. Never found Lululemon or anything like that. I just found like kind of unique vintage pieces, and that's sort of how my interest started. And then I moved to Colorado, and here it's more like we have, I think, at least like 2 bins locations. There's nearby cities with other bins. There's a lot of Goodwills. Like I find here more so like a lot of Anthropologie, Lululemon, like Victoria's Secret, like brands that sell really quick on Poshmark. Vintage is, I think, a little bit newer on Poshmark, but I definitely had some great sales. Like I sold like a vintage Nike like colorful wind jacket like very quickly, like last week on Poshmark.
Nice.
But definitely like the really trendy brand names are like really big on Poshmark, and certain ones are. So yeah, my sourcing's like totally different than it used to be based on where I live.
Right, right. And that's something, we've talked about on the channel many times. And you always have to take into account, if you're going to start reselling, what sort of sourcing is around you, what can you get? And that should shape your decision. I mean, maybe it's not the only thing, but if you live somewhere where there's cheap clothing, consider clothing. If there's cheap hard goods, consider that. There's a lot of yard sales, in the South, for instance, when, like Chad lives in Florida, for instance, the Golden Finger Picker, and there's yard sales year round just about in Florida because the weather's pretty good. So you always got to take that into account. So how about you, Kayla? Obviously, Louisiana is different than Colorado. So when you think about sourcing, and I know you've been doing it for a while too, but what kind of has been your take on the best ones for, building the type of business you want in that part of the country?
Well, obviously yard sales are going to be the best. We pretty much have them year round too, unless it's raining or cold. So for the past few weeks, we haven't really had any because we actually got some snow a couple of weeks ago, which is totally weird. But it's like short sleeve weather now. So we pretty much now garage sales are the place that you're going to get the best bang for your buck, obviously. But there are always things that we are looking for that other people are not looking for. So a lot of the people here that are the pickers, they are selling at antique booths. And we had an antique booth all of 2015. We actually had 2 booths near the end of the year. And, so I kind of see that kind of stuff that people are buying, but we are not necessarily looking for that. That's more like, home decor and little knick-knack type stuff that we wouldn't pick up. But you still can even go into the antique booth kind of places here and buy stuff to sell on eBay because a lot of people don't know what they're buying.
Really? So you're sourcing the antique booths to buy stuff for eBay?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Sometimes we do that because, well, the crowd that's doing that here are mostly, I would say, 45 to 65. And those people, I really don't think they're in touch with the online world as far as eBay and stuff. So they're not really looking for the kind of stuff that I'm finding out from people like you. They're looking for stuff that they can resell at their booth or local auctions. There are some people that buy it at the garage sales in the morning, take it straight to the auctions for the afternoon. So it's not really the type of stuff that, I don't know, it's a different crowd and they're looking for different things. Or, there might be someone that sells all clothing at a booth or something, and so they've got the clothing, so I'm not gonna get the clothing. Basically, it's kind of all gone. So yard sales is the best bang for your buck. Estate sales are sometimes good. It just depends. There's always a weak spot everywhere. So there could be some stuff at the estate sale that the owner person doesn't know that it's worth something. But we source pretty much anywhere. I bought some stuff at Target yesterday. When Blockbuster went out of business a few years ago, we made a fortune off of cash register printers, the thermal printers that they used.
Really?
The machines that they use, I think they're called teller mates. They count their tills after they're done. You put the cash in there, it weighs the cash and does all that. We sold those for $150 a piece, and I don't think we paid $20 or $25 for them.
Wow.
The cash register paper, I mean, we bought cords, we bought anything that they had that we could make money off of. So we just kind of have to look for opportunities like that. Pawn stores recently, we've done pretty well, but there's only a couple of pawn stores in our area. So that's kind of more about relationships. With people, but it's just kind of anywhere that we can find stuff. But I find that the people that sell here are not looking for what we're looking for when they go out.
Isn't that funny that we forget that? I think in the reselling world, a lot of us forget, and no matter what you're selling, and it could be clothing, it could be hard goods like you're selling, Kayla, we forget that businesses can be a source of, items to sell. Like you were talking about Blockbuster going out of business. I mean, that's a great example because when a business goes out of business, they usually just want to dump their everything, their inventory, their fixtures, their computers, and you can get some great deals if you're willing to sort of expand your knowledge here a little bit. And sometimes you got to buy in a little bit of bulk to do that, but man, you can get some great deals like you guys did with that teller piece of equipment.
Yeah, well, the zebra that I have that I print my shipping labels with, I got that at a photography business going out of going out of business, and I got 2 of them for $25.
Can't beat that. It's great
They
print.
work perfectly, so we have learned to even look for those kind of places for things for ourselves, because it really teaches you about depreciation, how fast things go down. So we try to take the opportunity, even at garage sales, to buy things that we might need or want, along with that, because you can get things at such great deals. Like, I hadn't bought a zebra for so long because they were so expensive, or to me anyway, and then I get one for $12.50,
Yeah.
and that has saved me so much money in ink. It's not even funny. So, and not very many people know the business that I have, or they don't know the scale that I do it on. I think a lot of people think it's a hobby. I don't really talk about it to my friends, but I did have a friend that knew about it, and he messaged me about this person who posted on a Facebook group about they were selling their remote business. They had like several thousand remotes that they were selling.
Remote controls.
Yeah. And I bought all of those for $150, and there was a
Nice.
cell phone in the pile that I sold for $150, and so everything else is free.
Right.
And their car remotes, some of those I've sold BMW and Volvo, sell them $20, $30 a piece.
Yep.
So that has been good. So if you know people that could be on the lookout for you, that's another way to find stuff too.
Making relationships.
On a Facebook group, he sent me a screenshot of the post. I wasn't actually in that group, and I called the guy up, when can I come get it? And he gave us storage containers and bubble mailers and all kind of stuff to go with it too. So I mean, it was well worth my few minutes to go over there and get the stuff.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, that's great advice. Just making those relationships in the community with other pickers, with business people. Just friends like that. I mean, you never know where they'll lead when they know that, hey, you sell things, and they can point you into some great deals. So that's great. Katie, I wanted to ask you, what sort of challenges have you been facing in your business? Maybe not, everybody I know has the challenge of, well, you got to list this, you got to list so much, and you got to put this up and that, but, maybe a little bigger picture than that. I'm really trying to get into people's mindset when it comes to their businesses and so on, and figure out what is it that, what's causing you pain in your business, and that you're like, I'm looking for a solution to this pain, and then it'll just be a little easier, or I'll be a little more effective or a little more efficient. What sort of issues have you run into like that?
I think with me, it's been a really big learning curve. So I've basically increased my items by like 100 items in the past 2 weeks. And I had to quickly, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a mess on my hands, and I don't know where things are because I did this so quickly. So I'm in the process now of figuring out my boxing situation. I bought shelves, but I'm still very much in the middle of organizing all of that. So I feel that's kind of anxiety inducing, to me at least, when I feel like things are kind of messy. So that's one big thing I'm working on. Also, the daylight situation with my pictures is really stressful, because I'm if I have an end of day meeting and it's going late or something, I'm I gotta get back to the daylight so I can take my product pictures in the last hour and a half of sunlight. So I ordered a lighting kit yesterday, and I'm hoping that's gonna help me, because that's been kind of stressful. Especially as I've been increasing my goals with how many pictures I want to take. It's kind of limiting when I'm is this picture okay, even though it's basically dusk and it's dark? So those are two big things that I'm working on and that are kind of stressing me out right now.
Yeah, and I see, as since I've started this channel, so many people seem to put off or minimize the importance of inventory. Figuring out how to organize what you have.
That's why I love watching your channel. I feel you always talk about process and things like that. And I think it's so helpful.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, if you guys have any tips or hints for that, if you're watching this video even later, leave them in the comments and so on. I don't have all the answers for inventory, and it's always a little in flux, and there's things that I'm tweaking here and there. But I do think that you have to have a system for being able to store things and then find them. And it's really that simple. Because if you can't do that, the day will come when, you know, somebody buys something and you can't find it, or you send them the wrong thing. Or you think you have this listed, but it's not. I found that last year when I did my inventory. I had like 4 items, maybe it was 3, that weren't listed. And they were in my listed inventory. And I'm going, well, that's a problem. Probably not going to sell them when they're no longer listed, right? You know, so just inventory is always tricky. But in the lighting, it sounds like you've, you know, actually addressed. And I think a lighting kit, I tell people there again, I think it's important to get your lighting and your photos right really quickly, especially with clothing, because if people can't see what it is, they're not going to buy it. Or they're going to buy it and they're going to be disappointed when they get it and they say, oh, I thought this was blue and it's, you know, black. But it sounds like you're on the right track, at least trying to solve some of those issues. What about you, Kayla? I mean, you obviously have a little different situation. You're more full-time, but you have a little bit, you know, you got some family issues there, not issues, but kids and so on. Helpers/kids, whatever you want to call them, right? What kind of challenges have you faced, you know, with your business?
One challenge is space, and I think that's always a challenge for everyone because, I mean, you know, the bigger the space you have, the more you can fill it up, and if you get a bigger space, you can still fill it up. So that is a challenge for me. One of my big challenges was not being organized from the beginning, or not really having a definite system. Now I have a little more of a definite system, and my problem seems to be the bigger items. I'm not moving them faster. I'm fast enough. So if I get something big, I really have to concentrate about, you know, think about, I need to get rid of it, it's taking up space. And I feel like I don't move things fast enough. Sometimes the bigger things are the kind of oddball things that are taking up space, or they're not going to go in a box, you know, on the shelf like everything else, because I have shelves with bank boxes on them, but not everything goes in the bank boxes. But some of that is this. My husband is buying this stuff, and if it were me, I would not have bought it because I'm the one packing it. And so I put off one time this really pretty globe for a Gone with the Wind lamp because I did not want to pack it because I did not want it to break it, and I didn't list it for a long time. So when I eventually did sell it, it arrived there safely, and thankfully the lady told me that it arrived there. But I put off for a long time listing that because I was like, this thing is going to break.
I'm curious, like, what are some of the bigger, I only sell clothes and like accessories. Like, what are some of the bigger items that you guys sell?
Well, we used to sell furniture when we had an antique booth. And so some of that came, we kind of abruptly were told our place was closing and we had to get all our stuff out. And so some of that has been issues in the past, having to bring it back, or just, you know, having an extra piece and not moving it fast enough. We've had a few pieces of lawn furniture and things outside that, you know, not really in the way, but they are bigger, and just really awkward shaped things. It might be, you know, a light fixture or something that's kind of a guy thing, you know, like some kind of I don't know, metal rack or something, you know, like we have some advertising type metal stuff from like garages and mechanic shops, and, you know, just old signs and things like that that are bigger and get in the way, because most everything fits in a bank box on the shelf. But, you know, there are some things, or like receivers, you know, or speakers, or, you know, different like audio equipment, heavy stuff like that. But it just depends on what we can find, what we have laying around that's awkward.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that when you said that, like large items. I mean, and it's not only being able to ship them, it's being able to store them safely. You know, I mean, obviously you can find them because they're larger, but, you know, I saw earlier last year when I had those 3,000 books in my garage, and they were smaller items, but it was 3,000 books. And I realized it's like, I am never going to buy this many books again with just a garage.
Well, I kind of feel that way about the remotes, but
yeah, well, I mean,
they are slowly trickling. Yeah,
because it's such a good deal, and you know you're going to make money on it.
Well,
but at the same time, you gotta store it. So
yeah, and it's practical. You know, in the summer, it slows down for us a lot. And the practical stuff, though, still sells, where it's not a want. You know, the slower times, it seems like the needs do better than the wants for us anyway. And so, you know, I know that in the summer, that's something that will still keep going when other stuff may slow up, because a lot of the stuff I sell is more collectible type things, and it's not something that you have to have. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, that's always an issue, is with those larger items, and keeping items all year round. And that gets into a whole nother discussion, which we'll save for another day. But somebody had asked this question in the chat, so I'm gonna throw this one to you, Kayla. Somebody's just starting out. I mean, this question gets asked a lot, but you know, I'm always curious to hear what people's responses to it. What advice do you give to somebody who's just starting out with reselling? You know, I don't know. You could go a lot of different ways with that, obviously, but how would you sort of, if you could sit down with that person for 5 minutes and talk to them, you know, what would you tell them? Hey, this is what you should do.
I would tell them to, this is kind of the thing everybody says, but I'd tell them to start selling stuff around their house that they don't have any money in. So if they lose money on it, it's, you know, it's not that big of a deal. That's one thing I would tell them. Another thing I would tell them is see if they can find a mentor, someone, maybe even someone out there in a Facebook group that's willing to help them and, you know, kind of guide them through. Because I have a friend like that. She is a friend of a friend, and she was selling stuff around the house, and she's talked to me a lot, and I've helped her, you know, solve problems before they've been problems, just, you know, helping her along with it. And so I feel like if I would have had somebody like myself that's done it for so long, it would have made it easier for me to come and stop a problem before it's a problem. But one of the best ways to learn really is just to mess up. It's to underestimate shipping, to have things break in the mail. I mean, that's the only way you're going to learn. And you just really need to make sure you learn every lesson from that mistake that you can before you move on, so you don't keep doing it over and over again. But a lot of the way is just to mess up. And two, surround yourself with people, Facebook groups, YouTube channels. I mean, I have learned so much just from listening while I'm taking photos or listening. I always have something going. I have learned so much that way. But most generally, people in the Facebook groups are really nice people, and strike up a friendship with someone and find, you know, people that are doing what you're doing, and ask questions. So
to recap, don't be sell stuff around your house to get started, because you know you've already bought it, so you know all about it. You don't lose anything. Don't be afraid to mess up, because that's how you're going to learn things. And surround yourself with people who are knowledgeable and can help you. So seems pretty reasonable. What about you, Katie? How would you, kind of advice would you give somebody? Someone wants to start out, say, selling on Poshmark, for instance. What would you tell them?
Well, I think Poshmark even really heavily advertises for people to just start selling out of their own closet. So it's really accessible for that, and it's super communal. So people ask a lot of questions on it, and you get really great answers. And people who have more followers are really helpful to people who are just starting. So I would also say just use your own closet. And if you start thrifting, like start out really small. Like don't try to buy. Like I had some instances where I was like, I spent like $20 on something and it like did not sell, which it was a good learning experience, but like start out with like really cheap items, like go to the bins if you can, and kind of learn from trial and error, but with like low cost items, I would say is a good way to start.
Okay. Yeah. So start with something low cost. You've got less risk and investment in it. So I think those are always good rules of thumb. And, you know, I don't know that I would really add too much to that. I think you guys kind of nailed it. So I was here thinking, like, what else would I add to that? You know, like, I don't know. I don't think so. All right. So let's talk about resources for a few moments. So Katie, with you, you're selling clothes, obviously a lot. And I know you're thinking about making the jump to eBay as well. So maybe this is a really important question for you you probably already thought about this, but what sort of resources have you found to be the most useful? And then what are you looking to use as if you do start, you know, going into the eBay world as well? What do you think you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of what will help you make that transition?
Right. I mean, in terms of where I actually am finding products, like now that I'm ramping up my store, like I'm willing to, the bins are farther than all of the Goodwills, but I've been going to the outlets a lot more. In terms of like the shipping supplies that or not shipping supplies, like packing, storage areas that I'm investing in, like I'm willing to spend some money up front to make sure that that's streamlined, because kind of what we talked about earlier, like there's a chance that I might not be able to find an item or something if I don't do that. Really, like I'm set up in a spare bedroom in like a 2-bedroom apartment. It's not very big, but I think like figuring out what is the best workspace table for me. Like I have this table that I thrifted here that I use to like pack my items because it's at standing height and I'm like trying to sell my desk over there. I think utilizing my space is really important, especially because I have a small space. And I notice the more I do that, the more efficient I'm getting at listing and streamlining my process. So that's sort of where I'm focusing right now.
Okay. Sounds good. What about you, Kayla? What sort of resources do you think are the most useful for you in your business?
I would say lighting, obviously, kind of figuring that out. Like I mentioned before, the Zebra, that has saved me so much money. A decent camera or a cell phone camera. Just, I think learning what you like and works for you best is going to take a little bit, but definitely you kind of need to spend a little money up front, not a lot, but just a little bit, and kind of get what you need. And then, you know, you'll learn more along the way of what you need. Like, for example, now I use clear poly bags like you would use for Amazon. I use those for plush. I use those for things that have a bunch of pieces to keep them together. I use that for stuff I'm worried about getting dusty, stuff like that. So it makes it easy to pull out of the box when it's ready to ship, and it keeps it all together. Like, I should have done that, 10 cents or whatever it's a bag years ago, but I didn't do it years ago.
Right.
So, you kind of learn those things along the way, but, definitely just start out with what you have. But, I got a camera at a pawn shop for $35 and it works great. It's the best camera I've ever used for eBay. So, you don't have to spend a lot, but just kind of, get yourself set up a little bit and then go from there. But you'll learn what you like eventually over time. But I didn't buy certain things for a long time. Like, I probably need to change my lighting. I really would rather have the soft boxes, but like, I didn't buy that for a while. You don't have to have it, but I didn't buy it for a while. I should have. It was not much money, and it helped tremendously.
I definitely did. Like, I'm like, there's some things that I just like didn't buy, and I'm like, why did I make my life so hard? Because the second I got it, everything became so much easier.
Yeah, that's like the man rule. Men are like, you can have the wrong tool to do something, but man, when you got the right tool, it's just so much easier. And you're like, oh yeah, honey, I need this, $80 doodad for that one time in the next 12 years that this might come up. I'm going to need it, and it's just,
I'm one of those people that would pay a little bit more for the better tape than pay less for the tape that just constantly shreds.
Yeah.
It's like, it wastes so much time. You waste a half a roll of tape trying to fight with it. Why not just buy the decent stuff to start off with?
Yeah, and I'm with you guys with the lights, because these lights I actually bought them off my friend for about $50, and he sold them to me in the condition, and not that I wouldn't. He said, "Hey, but if I ever need them, can I come use them?" I'm like, "Of course." But I was so happy I did, because I was trying to shoot with light from a lamp and everything else, and I'm like, when I started taking pictures with these, I went, I wasted so much. I wasted way more than $50 in time and energy and bad photos and other setups than if I would just went ahead and said, I'm going to do this right now, right off the bat. This is important. Lights. I'm selling clothing. It's important to have good lighting. You got to have good photos. So I think it's important to remember that you have to be willing to invest in yourself in this business a little bit. You don't have to have the nicest everything, but you do have to have a few things that really make it a lot simpler. 60 people watching right now, guys. Thank you so much for that. Smash the like button if you're liking the content and you're liking what you're hearing tonight. Lets us know we're doing a good job. I love bringing these shows to you guys, and I love my guests for coming on, because it's really cool to meet two new people that have a different perspective and can teach us something about how they're doing it and hopefully connect. What about scale? So Kayla, I don't know how big your store is on eBay, and you don't have to share that if you don't want to, but what's your mindset around scaling? Like, do you intend to scale your business up to a larger level? And if you do, what will it look like? What will kind of be like the point where you'll go, I think this is about right for my situation?
Well, I've thought about that over the last few months, I guess, because you, along with a few other people, have talked about how, kind of that formula of how many dollars you want listed or how many things you want listed to get what sell through, and, that number that you're trying to get to.
Right.
I've thought about that. So right now I have almost the most listings that I've ever had. I have almost 500 listings in my store.
Nice.
I have probably, because a lot of them are multi-quantity, so I have, maybe 650, 700 actual items listed,
okay.
Available for sale, but not that many listings. So I have that. And on Etsy, I probably run about 50 listings. Some of those are cross-posted, some of them not. Some things I just don't post on eBay, and it goes only to Etsy. And it's not, I'm not doing a whole lot there, but my plans for this year are to do more there. So without getting like too specific into numbers, the amount of money that I have in inventory listed on eBay, I would really like to a little more than double that. And I think that would get me the sell-through that I want. That's my plan right now. So I can't tell you how many listings that would be that I would need. I'm going to say probably 1,000 listings, and just kind of get to that point and see if that's where it gets me what I want. We will have to move eventually at some point, and I would love to be in a place where I could hire someone to help me a few hours a week, whether it's play with the toddler or photograph or whatever it is. I would like to be able to do that. So that's something that I'm thinking about in the future. But I think if I could do, because I know what my sales numbers were last year, if I could double that, or maybe a little more than double that this year, which I think is entirely possible, I would be very happy with that. I don't want this to turn into something that I dread, that it's another job, because that's not the point of this. The point of it's for it to be fun and be able to earn money at the same time. Right. Why work for yourself if it's going to be like going to work for someone else? That's
great point.
That's kind of the point of it. So I think I could maybe double what I'm doing right now and be pretty happy with that. And I've kind of taken your lead on, trying to figure out what I can get someone else to do. And I've hired a bookkeeper, so that is at least off my mind. And nice. I'm going to try to kind of go, toward other things that I may be able to kind of let go. I don't know what yet, but that's where I'm going. Because, for a while I thought, I can't hire somebody to do that. And, it may be more trouble for me to get the stuff to him than it would be for me to do it myself. I don't know. I'm going to see. But it doesn't cost that much. And for all the time that it would take me to input everything, I can free up that mental space to let someone else do it. And I should have probably priced that out a long time ago, and it wouldn't have been as bad as I thought. So that is something that I'm trying to lean toward too, is what can I not do? Because I can't do everything.
Yeah.
And what can I afford to get someone else to do? What will be the best bang for my buck to let someone else do? But I would ideally like to have another space that everything is in, away from my house. But right now, that's probably not going to happen. But I do have dreams. I do have hopes and plans that maybe one day it could be like that.
That's great. And the fact that you mentioned something that I hear from a friend of mine virtually every week, you can't kill it in everything every day. Like, no, you don't hit it out of the park every day in every way. Nobody does. And you have to realize that and say, there's certain things that I can let go of. So I think that's really smart on your part. What about in your case, Katie? What does scaling look like to you? Do you have a desire to sort of scale at Poshmark? I know you've talked about moving more into eBay.
Yeah. Well, I actually started this whole thing like way ahead of myself when I didn't even have a big store. I was paying my mom to do shipping for me, because on Poshmark, it's really expected for you to decorate your, like make it look pretty, like have a thank you note. Like my mom is so good at that. And I was like, I'm not even making that much money, but I feel like I can scale this more if you're doing this so I can focus on sourcing. So she helped me, but then I moved and now I'm more at the point where I'm looking into wholesale. So at least I can scale it a little bit so that I don't have to make a million listings and I can have a lot of products that would be on one listing on Poshmark. But I'm also kind of just, since I'm like 6 months into doing this, I'm seeing like what my limit is right now. And I'm just trying to challenge myself to be like, what are the sales that I can reasonably get by myself? And then kind of assess, well, like, okay, where can someone help me here to make me grow even more?
Right. And I think that's smart too, because, and that ties in with something Kayla was saying, if you can figure out ways to take yourself out of the process, what can you delegate, eliminate, consolidate, automate? I mean, there's all these ways you can get rid of you in the process, because, Karen and I were sourcing today, and I was thinking to myself, we were going through some bins, and these are hard bins to go through because they pile like this huge heaps of clothes on it, and much more so than they do in the bins in our area. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, I could hire someone to do this. This is not like I could hire somebody to do this, and they would be just as good at it as me, if probably not better. But as long as I'm here doing it, I'm only going to be able to grow. But I'm only going to get so big with just me and just Karen being part of it. So you have to find ways to grow yourself out of the business, I think. And because eBay's tricky that way. People say you can't scale it, but I don't think that's really true. A Purple Lily had a question, said, do either of you sell smalls such as jewelry? And if so, how do you categorize it after listing?
I do. Well, sort of. I'm not an expert at it yet by any means, but I kind of got into it because there's one YouTuber that does a lot of vintage jewelry, Margaret. And so she kind of gave me the jewelry bug. And I bought a huge jewelry lot off of eBay. So I've done that. And what I do is anything like that, or even like the remotes, what I would do is I have real small like jewelry bags, plastic bags that I'll put it in there. I guess that's what they're talking about, kind of categorizing it for storage. I don't know. I'll have like a gallon size bag that has A on it, and all the bags have A101, A102, A103, and they all go in the A bag, and then I'll start a B bag and it'll have B102 or whatever, and I put that in the custom label field right under the listing name, so that when I go to ship it, I can pull it. So just having it labeled in a bag, and then I reuse my bags. I don't send the ones with the numbers on them to the person. I'll put it in just a regular bag, a plain one without a label, and just reuse my number system over and over again, because until the bag wears out. But that's how I do it. I don't know that that's necessarily the best way, but it seems to work. Unless you just have 5 or 6 of one thing, but if you have hundreds of something, you really have to come up with some kind of numbering system.
Yeah. How about you, Katie? Any experience with jewelry?
I only sell jewelry here and there, but I am interested in increasing it. So thanks for that tip. That gave me a lot of good ideas.
Yeah, cool. I don't really have it perfected yet, but that's just kind of a guess. And I sniped a box of jewelry that I knew, I could kind of figure out something that would be worth, enough in there to pay for the box. So that's just kind of how I've kind of gotten started with it. And I plan to do that more. I plan to source more from eBay.
Yeah, and it's funny because I heard a comment, and I think it was from Raiken just the other day, and he said, when you hire an employee, they're going to teach you one of two things. One, they're going to help your business get more productive. Like that can happen and does happen for a lot of people. Or two, they're going to help you find all the inefficiencies in your business. Like all the places where you're not really doing it in an effective way, because they're not going to know how to do it. They're not going to be very good at it. So when you're working in your business as an employee, you're the owner, but when you're doing the work of the business, think of yourself, I think sometimes as an employee, you can find the inefficiencies. You can find, hey, does this way of storing jewelry work? Is this the right way to categorize it? Am I running into any issues? If not, maybe you continue. And if you do, then you think, oh, well, I need to tweak this a little bit and figure out a different way to do it. So But that was a good analogy Raiken made, though. It's like, hey, an employee will find all the inefficiencies in your business.
Well, if you're the only one who knows where something is and who knows where everything is, then, you might not be quite as efficient as you want to be.
Yeah. And you'll be the only one who ever knows. You don't ever figure out a better way, and that's a problem. So that's interesting. But all right, guys. Well, listen, we are at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of my guest time. I want to thank both of you guys for coming on tonight. You were great. You answered every question, and you were really gracious with your time. Katie, how can people get hold of you? I think you were sharing your Instagram there in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments too, but my Instagram is OONATUNU. That's my cat's nickname, don't ask about it. _ Poshmark, POSHMARK.
Okay, awesome. And what about you, Kayla? I think you had mentioned maybe a group or...
Yes, I am in several groups, and people may have seen me around, but I am in the Rebels of Reselling group.
Hey, that's a good one. I like that one.
So you can find me there, and I've commented a few times, and I'm going to comment on the post for tonight's show. So if anyone would like to get in touch with me, that's the easiest way.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Happy to talk to anyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Bye. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
No, I was just saying bye. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, guys. Thanks again, and be with us. We will be back on the air, I think probably Monday afternoon with a recap show. You can hear about our big bin adventure we had today. You can hear about Karen selling her first item on eBay ever, which was exciting for her, and I thought that was an interesting story. We'll have to share it for another time, and we'll have another Connect show next week, guys. Next Thursday. I'm lining up guests now as we speak. And I hope you guys like these series, introducing you to some new people and hear some new perspectives. So, all right, guys. Well, once again, thanks. And I will see everyone out there real soon. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Bye.
Bye.